After completing the weights for the Steampunk Analytical Balance project, I made this tray to hold them. It was made from this brass spur gear, a block of rosewood, and miscellaneous brass pieces. Here I'm turning a brass rod to serve as the central shaft of the weight tray. The rod is turned down to the same diameter as the inside diameter of the brass gear. I then drilled and tapped the end of the brass rod. This allows a screw to hold the brass gear to the brass rod. Next, the other end of the brass rod is turned to a diameter that will be inserted into the rosewood base. This end of the rod is also drilled and tapped so that it can receive a screw. In order for the top of the tray to match the individual weights, I cut a finial in the same shape as the finials on top of each weight. This finial was cut freehand by comparing it to the finial on the top of the largest weight. A hole was drilled through the finial so that it could be held to the top of the weight tray. Next, the rosewood block will be cut into a circular shape. After finding the center, the rosewood block is drilled and excess wood is taken off of each corner. In order to turn it into a circular shape, a bolt is put through the hole in the center of the wood block. This is clamped into the chuck of the lathe. When finished turning on the lathe, we have a disc of rosewood about an inch thick that will serve as the base of the weight tray. In order to insert the weights, 7 holes are drilled at the same diameter of the individual weights around the circumference of the base. Masking tape was placed around the entire surface of the wood in order to keep it from splitting while drilling. Drilling was completed on the mill using a combination of drill bits and end mills so that each hole would have a flat bottom. Several coats of polyurethane varnish were applied to the surface of the rosewood without staining. When completed, the rosewood has a beautiful iridescent finish that's hard to pick up on camera. For the small 0.2 and 0.5 gram weights, space was used between the spokes of the brass gear. A screw for mounting this plate will use the hole that I'm tapping here. I am going to be putting a brass plate in the spaces between 3 of the spokes. Brass plate was cut and trimmed to fit in the space between the spokes. A A hole was drilled for mounting the plate to the previously drilled and tapped spoke of the gear. Each side of the tray is stamped with the value of the weight that will be stored there. Here I am making a brass medallion that will be fastened to the surface of the redwood base. 8 tweezers propped through the gear will rest on this brass medallion. I used adhesive-backed felt for padding on the bottom of the weight tray. Felt was also used for padding inside the holes for each of the weights. Here I'm cutting a hole in the felt so that I can insert a screw to assemble the piece so far. Quarter-inch brass strips were used to make labels for each of the weights. 7 labels were made, 1 for each of the weights. Each label was drilled, then mounted to the base, adjacent to its corresponding weight. I etched my initials into the surface of the brass medallion. The piece is then reassembled. Check out my next video. It shows the construction of the matching tweezers you can see in these photos.